The mimosa glass paused halfway to Nicole's lips as she surveyed the outdoor patio at Riverside Bistro, her eyes gleaming with the particular satisfaction of someone about to make a grand announcement. Sunday brunch with the family had become a monthly ritual, though I suspected today's gathering had been orchestrated specifically for this moment. I have incredible news, Nicole began, setting down her glass with deliberate care. She was 31, 3 years older than me, and had cultivated the art of commanding attention since childhood. I'm finally opening my boutique. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Nicole, that's wonderful. Where? Dad asked, already reaching for his wallet as if prepared to fund whatever deposit was required. Nicole's smile widened. Westbridge Plaza. The table fell silent. I kept my expression neutral, cutting into my eggs Benedict with precise movements. Our Westbridge Plaza. Mom's voice rose with excitement. The family strip mall. Obviously, Nicole said, laughing. Where else would I open it? The corner unit next to the coffee shop just became available. It's perfect, high foot traffic, plenty of parking, and the rent-free aspect certainly doesn't hurt. I took a sip of my coffee, black and perfectly brewed. The commercial lease agreement for Unit 2847 sat in my briefcase, which leaned against my chair. The previous tenant, a yoga studio, had vacated 2 weeks ago after their 3-year lease expired. Rent-free, Dad repeated slowly. Nicole, that's a commercial property. There are operational costs, insurance. It's family property, Dad. Nicole waved her hand dismissively. Grandpa bought that plaza in 1987. We've owned it for almost 40 years. I'm not paying rent to use what's already ours. My brother Marcus, 33 and always quick to support Nicole's ventures, nodded enthusiastically. Makes perfect sense. Why should family pay family? That's just moving money around for no reason. Exactly. Nicole pulled out her phone, swiping through images. I've already hired a designer. The boutique will be called Luxe and Linen. High-end women's fashion, curated pieces, some local designers. I'm thinking soft grays and rose gold for the interior. Mom was already leaning over to look at the designs. Oh, Nicole, these are gorgeous. When did you plan all this? I've been working on it for months, Nicole admitted. I just wanted to make sure everything was perfect before I told you. Grand opening this Saturday. I've already sent invitations to everyone in my network. This Saturday. I spoke for the first time since Nicole's announcement. That's 5 days away. I work fast. Nicole's tone carried a hint of condescension. Some of us can't afford to take years deliberating every decision, Emma. The retail market moves quickly. I nodded slowly, returning my attention to my breakfast. Nicole had never understood what I actually did for work. None of them had. Emma, you should come to the opening, Mom said, her voice holding that particular brightness that meant she was trying to include me out of obligation rather than genuine interest. It'll be a family celebration. I'll check my schedule, I said neutrally, still doing that property management thing. Marcus asked, not bothering to hide his disinterest. How's that going? It keeps me busy. I'm sure it does. He exchanged a glance with Nicole that I pretended not to notice. They'd developed a shorthand over the years, a silent language of judgment about my choices, my career, my modest apartment in what they considered an unfashionable neighborhood. Nicole turned back to Mom. I've already ordered the signage. It should be installed by Thursday. The interior designer is starting tomorrow. We're working around the clock to meet the Saturday deadline. What about permits? Dad asked. He'd been a civil engineer before retirement and maintained a respect for proper procedures that his children had largely abandoned. All handled, Nicole assured him. The plaza management company has been very cooperative. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Westbridge Property Management had been very cooperative because they'd received no communication from Nicole whatsoever. I knew this because I reviewed their weekly reports every Monday morning. Who did you speak with at the management company? I asked. Nicole frowned slightly, as if annoyed by the question. I didn't need to speak with anyone, Emma. It's family property. I informed them I'd be taking possession of Unit 2847, and they provided the keys. They gave you keys? I kept my voice level, curious despite myself. Well, Marcus picked them up for me on Wednesday. They were very professional about it. Marcus nodded. Talked to some assistant there. Young guy, probably an intern. I explained I was family and needed access to the corner unit. He handed over the keys. No problem. I made a mental note to have a serious conversation with the front desk staff at Westbridge Property Management. Their job was to verify identity and authorization, not distribute keys to anyone claiming family connection. So the designer has already started. Mom was pulling out her own phone now. I need to see these plans in detail. We should coordinate. Maybe I can help with the marketing materials. Actually, I'd love that. Nicole said, your eye for design has always been impeccable. I was thinking we could do a mother-daughter collaboration on the branding. I watched them lean together over Nicole's phone, already deep in discussion about fonts and color schemes. Dad had turned his attention to Marcus, asking about his latest cryptocurrency investments. No one was looking at me. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out discreetly, glancing at the screen. Robert Martinez, my real estate attorney, had sent a text arriving in 5. Outdoor patio. I typed back quickly. Yes, northwest corner table. Nicole was still talking, her voice carrying across the patio. I've already committed to $60,000 in initial inventory. The designer's fee is another $15,000, and the build-out costs are running about $40,000. But it's worth it. This is going to be the premier boutique in Westbridge. That's a significant investment, Dad observed. It's an investment in family legacy, Nicole countered. Grandpa built that plaza to provide for future generations. I'm honoring that legacy by creating something beautiful there. Mom reached over and squeezed Nicole's hand. He would be so proud of you. I thought about Grandpa Samuel, who died 6 years ago at the age of 89. He'd been a shrewd businessman, building his commercial real estate portfolio from nothing. What Nicole and the others didn't know, what I'd never told them, was that Grandpa had spent his final 2 years teaching me everything he knew about property investment, management, and the brutal realities of commercial real estate. The weak point in any empire, he told me during one of our last conversations, is assuming it will always be there. Family businesses fail because the second generation thinks they're entitled to what the first generation earned. I'd been 22 when he died, fresh out of college with a degree in business administration. The family had expected me to join Marcus at his marketing firm, or help Nicole with whatever venture she was pursuing at the time. Instead, I'd taken the modest inheritance Grandpa left me, $50,000 that my siblings had mocked as insulting compared to their 6-figure distributions, and disappeared into what they called property management work. What they didn't know was that Grandpa's true inheritance hadn't been the $50,000. It had been the education, the contacts, and the carefully structured opportunity he'd created for me to prove myself. Robert Martinez appeared at the edge of the patio, his silver hair catching the morning sunlight. He was 62, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, despite the Sunday casualness of our surroundings, and he carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent 4 decades practicing real estate law. He spotted me immediately and approached our table with measured steps. "Excuse me," he said politely, his voice carrying enough to interrupt Nicole's monologue about imported Italian fixtures. "I'm looking for Emma Caldwell." All eyes turned to me. "Robert," I said calmly. "Right on time." "I apologize for interrupting your family brunch," he said, though his tone suggested no actual apology. "But we have several time-sensitive documents that require your review and signature." Mom looked confused. "Documents? I'm sorry," Marcus said, his voice edged with irritation. "And you are?" Robert extended his hand. "Robert Martinez, Caldwell and Associates Real Estate Law. I'm Miss Caldwell's attorney. Emma has an attorney." Nicole's laugh was sharp. "For what?" "Property management, among other things," Robert said neutrally. He turned back to me. "I have the lease revision documents for Westbridge Plaza, the quarterly financial reports from all properties, and the eviction notices you requested for units 2847 and 3102. The table went completely silent. "Eviction notices," Dad said slowly. "Yes, sir." Robert pulled a tablet from his briefcase, scrolling through documents with practiced efficiency. "Standard procedure when unauthorized occupants take possession of commercial units without proper lease agreements or security deposits." "Wait," Nicole said, her face paling. What are you talking about? Unit 2847. That's my boutique. According to property records, Unit 2847 is a commercial space currently owned by Caldwell Properties LLC, Robert said, consulting his tablet. The previous tenant's lease expired on the 15th of this month. No new lease has been executed for that space. Caldwell Properties, Marcus repeated. That's me, I said quietly. I'm Caldwell Properties. Nicole stood up so abruptly, her chair scraped against the patio stones. That's impossible. Westbridge Plaza is family property. Grandpa bought it in 1987. Grandpa Samuel sold Westbridge Plaza in 2018, I said, keeping my voice level. 7 years ago, the buyer was Caldwell Properties LLC, a limited liability company I formed with Grandpa's guidance and initial capital investment. Mom's face had gone white. Emma, what are you saying? I'm saying I own Westbridge Plaza, I said simply. I've owned it for 7 years. I also own Riverside Commons, the Parkside office complex, and 16 other commercial properties throughout the county. My portfolio is currently valued at approximately $147 million. The number hung in the air, like a physical thing. That's impossible, Marcus said flatly. You work in property management. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. You live in that tiny apartment. I live modestly because I reinvest my profits into acquiring new properties, I said. The apartment costs me $800 a month. My car is paid off and reliable. I don't need to project wealth to build it. Robert had taken a seat beside me, opening his briefcase fully now. Miss Caldwell owns 37 commercial properties outright and holds significant stakes in 12 others through various partnerships and investment vehicles. Her annual revenue from commercial leases alone exceeds $8 million. Nicole sank back into her chair, her face ashen. You own Westbridge Plaza. Yes, and you let me. She stopped, seeming unable to complete the thought. I let you what? I asked. Assume things. Plan a business without doing basic research. Spend over $100,000 without verifying you had legal access to the space. You should have told me. Nicole's voice rose. This is family. Family doesn't exempt you from basic business practices, I said. You never asked who owned the plaza. You never contacted the management company through proper channels. You never requested a lease agreement or reviewed commercial rental rates for the area. You just assumed. Mom found her voice, though it shook. Why didn't you tell us? Because Grandpa and I agreed it was better this way, I said. He knew that the moment family found out I had money, everything would change. Every business venture would become my problem to fund. Every financial setback would become my responsibility to fix. He wanted me to build something real, something sustainable, without the weight of family expectation crushing it before it could grow. So you've been lying to us for 7 years, Marcus said. I've been private about my business affairs, I corrected. There's a difference. You assumed I was unsuccessful because I didn't broadcast my success. That's not the same as lying. Robert cleared his throat. Miss Caldwell, if we could address the immediate situation, I nodded. Of course. He turned to Nicole. You currently have unauthorized access to Unit 2847. You've made substantial modifications to the interior without lease approval or proper permits. According to the designer's work orders that were filed with the city, you've removed load-bearing wall sections, installed unpermitted electrical work, and made plumbing modifications that violate commercial building codes. Nicole's face went from white to green. The designer said it was fine. The designer doesn't own the building, Robert said. Miss Caldwell does, and she's now liable for all code violations occurring on her property. The city inspector is scheduled to visit the property tomorrow morning at 9. What does that mean? Mom asked. It means the city will likely issue stop work orders and require all unpermitted modifications to be reversed. Robert explained. The costs for bringing the unit back to code-compliant condition will fall to the property owner. That's Miss Caldwell, unless she can recover them from the party responsible for the violations. You're going to sue me? Nicole's voice was barely a whisper. I'm going to protect my property and my legal liability, I said. What that looks like depends entirely on what happens next. Dad had been quiet, processing everything. Now he spoke, his engineer's mind working through the implications. Emma, you said eviction notices,
No.
plural. What's Unit 3102? Robert consulted his tablet. Unit 3102 is currently occupied by Vanguard Marketing Solutions, owned and operated by Marcus Caldwell. Marcus's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. My office. Your lease expired 18 months ago, I said. I sent renewal notices through the property management company. You ignored them. You've been occupying the space without a valid lease agreement for over a year and a half. I thought. Marcus stopped, realization dawning. The notices came from Westbridge Property Management. I thought they were just bureaucratic nonsense.
No.
It said that they were just bureaucratic nonsense. Family property doesn't need. It's not family property, I said. It's my property. And commercial real estate doesn't operate on assumptions and family favors. It operates on lease agreements, insurance requirements, and legal contracts. So you're evicting both of us? Nicole asked. I'm requiring both of you to operate like actual tenants, I said. If you want to lease space in my properties, we'll negotiate fair market terms. Unit 2847, rents for $4,500 per month for retail space. Unit 3102 rents for $3,200 per month for office space. Both require security deposits equal to 3 months' rent, proper insurance coverage, and signed lease agreements that comply with state commercial tenancy laws. Marcus did the math quickly. That's $9,600 just to cover security deposits, plus first and last month's rent. We're talking about $30,000 before we even start paying monthly rent. Welcome to commercial real estate, I said. It's what every other tenant in my properties pays. Family doesn't get special treatment, but family also doesn't get punished. You'll pay the same rates as everyone else. I can't afford that, Nicole said. Her voice had gone small, childlike. I've already spent everything on inventory and build-out. Then you'll need to find different space for your boutique, I said. Or find investors to help fund it properly. What you can't do is continue operating in Unit 2847 without a lease. Mom's hands were shaking as she set down her mimosa glass. Emma, sweetheart, I don't understand. Why are you doing this? We're family. I'm doing this because I'm a property owner with legal responsibilities, I said. Nicole's unpermitted construction created liability for me. Marcus's expired lease creates insurance complications. If either of them were strangers, would you think I was being unreasonable for requiring proper legal documentation? But we're not strangers, Mom said. No, I agreed. Which is why I'm willing to work with both of you to find solutions instead of simply filing for immediate eviction and damages. But I won't compromise the business I've spent 7 years building because family thinks rules don't apply to them. Robert pulled several documents from his briefcase, arranging them on the table with methodical precision. I've prepared 3 options for both Miss Nicole Caldwell and Mr. Marcus Caldwell. Option 1. Immediate vacation of the premises with mutual release of liability claims. Option 2. Execution of standard commercial lease agreements with move-in costs due within 30 days. Option 3. Negotiated settlement involving partial equity stakes in the tenant businesses in exchange for reduced rental rates. Equity stakes, Marcus said sharply. You want pieces of our businesses. I'm offering you a way to afford the space you want while maintaining your business operations, I said. If you give me 20% equity in Vanguard Marketing, I'll reduce your monthly rent by 40% and waive the security deposit. You maintain control of your company, I get a small return on my investment beyond rent, and we both benefit. And for my boutique? Nicole asked. Same offer, 20% equity, 40% rent reduction, waive security deposit. You'll pay $2,700 a month instead of $4,500. That gives you breathing room to establish the business without drowning in overhead costs. But you'll own part of our companies, Marcus said. Silent partner shares, Robert clarified. Miss Caldwell would have no operational control, no management authority. She'd simply receive a proportional share of annual profits if any. Standard investor arrangement. Nicole looked at her designer mock-ups on her phone, then back at me. My grand opening is Saturday. 5 days away. I've sent 200 invitations. I've committed to vendors, scheduled photographers, hired staff for the day. Then you have a decision to make quickly, I said. Sign a proper lease agreement with move-in costs due within 30 days. Accept the equity arrangement, or cancel your opening and find different space. I can't cancel, Nicole whispered. Everyone I know is coming. My entire professional network. If I cancel now, I'll look like a failure. Then I suggest you review option 2 or 3 carefully. Robert said, sliding copies of the contracts across the table. These are standard agreements. You're welcome to have your own attorney review them, though I should note that time is limited if you want to proceed with Saturday's opening. Dad had been studying the documents, his engineering background making him comfortable with complex paperwork. These look legitimate, he said quietly. Standard commercial lease terms, market rate pricing for the area. The equity arrangement is actually generous. She could easily charge full rent and demand the equity stake. I'm not trying to punish anyone, I said. I'm trying to run legitimate business operations while giving family members opportunities to participate fairly. Fairly, Marcus repeated bitterly. You let us think you were barely getting by while you built a real estate empire worth over $100 million. I built it precisely because no one knew, I said. Grandpa understood that. He knew that the moment money became visible, it would become everyone's solution to their problems. Every bad investment, every failed business venture, every poor financial decision would become something I was expected to fix. We're not charity cases, Nicole said. I never said you were, I replied. But you're also not entitled to free commercial space just because we share DNA. Every legitimate business pays rent. Every responsible tenant maintains proper insurance and follows building codes. I'm asking you to do what you should have been doing all along. Mom was crying quietly now, tears tracking through her makeup. I don't understand how we got here. We're supposed to be a family. We are a family, I said, keeping my voice gentle. But I'm also a business owner. Those two things can coexist, but not if one side expects constant exceptions and special treatment. Robert began gathering his documents. I'll need decisions by close of business Tuesday, he said. Wednesday morning I'll be filing the appropriate paperwork with the court based on your choices. If no decision is made, I'll proceed with standard eviction proceedings for both units. That's 2 days, Marcus protested. It's 48 business hours to review 3 straightforward options, Robert corrected. That's more than adequate time, and considerably more generous than most landlords would provide for unauthorized occupancy situations. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Miss Caldwell, I'll email you the updated quarterly reports this afternoon. The investor meeting for the Riverside Commons expansion is scheduled for Thursday at 2. Thank you, Robert, I said. He nodded to the table in general. Enjoy the rest of your brunch. After he left, silence settled over the table like fog. Our food had gone cold. The other diners on the patio were carefully pretending they hadn't overheard every word of the conversation. Finally, Dad spoke. Emma, I need to ask you something directly. I met his eyes. Okay. Did your grandfather know he was dying when he sold you Westbridge Plaza? Yes, I said. He'd been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He had maybe 6 months. He wanted to make sure his life's work went to someone who would preserve it, grow it, and treat it with the respect it deserved. And he chose you instead of us, Mom said, her voice hollow. He chose someone who'd spent 2 years working alongside him, learning the business, studying every aspect of property management and commercial real estate, I said. Someone who asked questions instead of just expecting dividend. Someone who wanted to build something instead of just inherit something. We would have preserved it, Marcus said. Would you? I asked. Be honest, if you'd inherited Westbridge Plaza, what would you have done with it? He opened his mouth, then closed it. You would have seen it as a cash cow, I said. A source of passive income to fund other ventures. Nicole would have turned half the retail spaces into vanity projects. You would have leveraged it for capital to invest in whatever seemed exciting that year. Within 5 years, you would have run it into the ground or sold it off piece by piece. You don't know that, Nicole said, but her voice lacked conviction. I know that neither of you has ever asked me a single question about what I do for work, I said. In 7 years, neither of you has shown the slightest interest in how I spend my time or what I've built. You assumed I was unsuccessful because I wasn't flashy, and that assumption made it easy to dismiss me. That's not fair, Mom said. Isn't? I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a photo. This is from Marcus's 40th birthday party 3 years ago. I gave you a framed photograph of the original Westbridge Plaza, from 1987, the year Grandpa bought it. Do you remember what you said, Nicole? She looked away. You said, how sweet. Emma's giving us nostalgia since she can't afford real gifts. I set the phone down. The frame cost $1,200. It was custom made from reclaimed wood, salvaged from the plaza's original facade. But you assumed it was cheap, because I gave it to you. I didn't mean. Nicole stopped. Yes, you did, I said. And that's fine, people make assumptions. But when those assumptions lead you to illegally occupy commercial space and make unpermitted modifications to property you don't own, the assumptions become problems. Dad was still studying the lease documents. If Nicole accepts the equity arrangement, what happens to her build-out costs? The $100,000 she's already spent. That depends on what she spent it on, I said. The inventory is hers. That can stay regardless of which option she chooses. The unpermitted construction will need to be reversed. If she signs a proper lease, we can work with the designer to create a compliant renovation plan. Some of the work might be salvageable. And if she can't afford the move-in costs for option 2, Mom asked, then the equity arrangement makes the most sense, I said. Or she finds different space. Those are the options. Nicole was scrolling through her phone, her fingers moving frantically. The designer says the unpermitted work will cost $30,000 to reverse and redo properly. I don't have $30,000. I've already maxed out my credit cards for the inventory. Then I'd recommend option 3, I said. The equity arrangement gives you manageable monthly costs and eliminates the security deposit requirement. We'll need to get the construction properly permitted, but I can work with you on timing so your Saturday opening isn't disrupted. You'd let me still open on Saturday. Nicole looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. If you sign the lease agreement and accept the equity terms by Tuesday end of business. Yes, I said. I'll have my construction manager fast-track the permit applications and work with your designer to modify the plans to meet code. You'll have your grand opening, just with proper legal documentation in place. And I give you 20% of my business. You give me 20% of a business that gets to exist in premium retail space at below market rent, I corrected. If Lux and Linen succeeds, we both benefit. If it fails, you haven't bankrupted yourself paying full commercial rent while trying to establish it. Marcus was doing calculations on his phone. The equity deal would save me about $1,900 a month compared to full rent. Over a year, that's almost $23,000, which you can reinvest in growing Vanguard marketing, I said. Or save, or spend on whatever you want. But yes, it's substantial savings in exchange for a minority stake in your company. I need to think about this, he said. You have until Tuesday, Robert reminded him via the documents he'd left behind. Mom reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine but not quite touching. Emma, sweetheart, I'm trying to understand all of this. You've been building this empire for 7 years, and we had no idea. Don't you think we deserve to know? Why? I asked gently. What would it have changed? We could have helped you, she said. Could you? I met her eyes. Mom, you've borrowed money from Marcus 4 times in the past 3 years that I know of. Dad's retirement portfolio lost 40% of its value in 2022 because he invested in Marcus's cryptocurrency venture. Nicole has started and abandoned 6 different businesses since college. What help could any of you have provided that wouldn't have ended up costing me more than it benefited me? The truth of it hung between us, undeniable. We're your family, she said, and her voice broke on the words. You are, I agreed, and I love you. But love doesn't exempt anyone from basic business practices. If Nicole wanted to open a boutique in space I own, she needed to approach it like any other tenant would. If Marcus wanted to continue leasing office space, he needed to maintain a current lease agreement. Those aren't unreasonable expectations. No, Dad said quietly. They're not. He looked at Nicole, Then Marcus. Your sister is right. We've been operating on assumptions instead of information. That's sloppy at best, entitled at worst. Dad, Marcus started. No, Dad cut him off. She's right. Emma built something real, something substantial, while we were busy being too proud to notice. She did it quietly because she knew we'd treat her success as our resource. And she was right to keep it private, because look at what happened the moment space and her property became desirable. We didn't ask permission, didn't negotiate terms, didn't even verify ownership. We just took. Nicole was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. I didn't know. I really thought it was still family property. But you didn't check, I said. You didn't do basic research before committing 6 figures to a business venture. That's not a mistake, that's negligence. I know, she whispered. I pulled a tissue from my purse and handed it to her. Nicole, I want your boutique to succeed. I genuinely do. You have good taste, good business instincts when you focus them, and a network that could make Luxe and Linen very successful. But you need to treat it like a real business, not a hobby funded by family favors. I will, she said. I promise, I will. Then sign the equity agreement Tuesday. Work with my construction manager to get the permits filed correctly. Have your grand opening Saturday. Build something sustainable. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Marcus was still studying the numbers. The equity arrangement is actually fair, he admitted. More than fair, given that you could legally evict me immediately. I could, I agreed. But that doesn't benefit either of us. You need office space. I have office space available. We can make it work if you're willing to operate above board. I am, he said. I'll sign Tuesday. Mom looked around the table at her 3 children, one who'd built an empire in secret, 2 who were just beginning to understand how far their assumptions had led them astray. When did we stop really seeing each other? She asked quietly. Maybe we never really did, I said. We saw the versions we expected to see. You expected me to be the struggling youngest child. I expected you to treat my success as something to exploit. Neither expectation was fair, but both were based on patterns we'd established over years. Can we change that? Dad asked. We can try, I said. But it starts with honesty. No more assumptions, no more expectations of special treatment. If we're going to be family and business associates, we need clear boundaries. Agreed, Dad said firmly. He looked at Nicole and Marcus. Both of you will sign those agreements Tuesday. You'll operate as legitimate tenants. And you'll treat your sister with the professional respect her accomplishments deserve. Yes, sir, they said in near unison, sounding like children again. I signaled the waiter for the check. When it arrived, I placed my credit card in the folder without looking at the total. Emma, Mom said, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, I said, but I want to. Today is complicated enough without arguing over brunch costs. The waiter returned with my card and receipt. I added a generous tip and stood. I need to meet Robert for another appointment, I said. But I'll be available by phone Tuesday if either of you has questions about the agreements. Emma, Nicole said, standing as well. I'm sorry for all of it. The assumptions, the dismissiveness, the way I treated you. I know, I said. And I accept your apology. But apologies don't mean much without changed behavior. I'll change, she promised. I'll prove it. Good, I said. I'm looking forward to seeing what you build. I hugged each of them goodbye. Awkward, uncertain embraces that held the weight of 7 years of secrets and a lifetime of complicated family dynamics. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Robert. How did it go? I typed back. Better than expected. Both will likely sign Tuesday. Good. Your 2 p.m. meeting still on for Thursday? Yes, Riverside Commons expansion is priority. I climbed into my 10-year-old Honda, paid off, reliable, completely unassuming, and headed back to my modest apartment. I had quarterly reports to review, 3 property inspections scheduled for the week, and a conference call with investors in San Francisco. The real estate empire I'd built wasn't flashy. It didn't announce itself with luxury cars or penthouse apartments. It existed in spreadsheets and lease agreements, in carefully maintained properties and long-term strategic planning. Grandpa had understood that. Wealth that lasted wasn't about showing off. It was about building systems that sustained themselves, making smart decisions consistently, and treating every venture with the seriousness it deserved. As I drove through the city, I passed West Bridge Plaza. The corner unit where Nicole's boutique would eventually open was dark now, but by Saturday, it would be filled with light and elegantly displayed clothing. Marcus's office suite on the second floor showed signs of life, computers glowing, people moving inside. Both of them would sign the agreements Tuesday. Both of them would learn to operate as real tenants, with real responsibilities. And maybe, eventually, we'd figure out how to be a family that saw each other clearly, without assumptions clouding the view. My phone rang. Another property manager calling about a maintenance issue at one of my apartment complexes. I answered professionally, already shifting mental gears to handle the problem. This was my life, not glamorous, not loud, not designed to impress anyone. Just steady, strategic, successful, exactly the way Grandpa had taught me it should be.